Welcome to episode number 5 of Inside the Mind. Thanks for tuning in to another episode for this special recording project that we're putting together for November. This episode is with Ben Buckingham, the Australian Olympian, 4th fastest steeplechaser of all time. Looked it up before, about 3 seconds off the Australian record of Sean Crichton's, who's also a friend of the show. Bucks, I've always looked up to Bucks. I always thought he was like a super interesting character that often doesn't fit the mould of the people he trains with. So I always found him fascinating to chat to. He's been on the show a number of times, so if you've listened to the Inside Runner for a long time, you would have heard him filling in and being interviewed and stuff over the years. Really appreciate that he gave up some time. We recorded this on a Sunday afternoon, so for someone who works full-time and is newly married, it was nice of him to give up some time for his Sunday arvo. I did forget to plug my microphone in. Well, I plugged it in, but I forgot to select that microphone in the first 12 minutes of the interview before I realised that it wasn't selected. So if you're wondering why my audio is a bit quiet in the first 12 minutes, that's why. I'm sorry about that. Long story short, I had to move at the last minute and, moved my laptop and thought the microphone was plugged in, but it wasn't. Thank you to all the people who wrote in after the Croker interview. I reckon I've recorded, at least 315 episodes of Inside Running Podcast, probably at least 50 or 60 episodes of Tell Me Your Tales, plus all our bonus stuff. So I reckon I'm easy at 400 episodes. And never have I seen the response to an episode that I saw from that interview with Brad, that discussion last Thursday night. So thank you to all the people that wrote in. I know people have been in his DMs, people have been in my DMs. I'll say it again on the main show, how, I don't know, that episode just hit home with a lot of people, and I really appreciate the people that took time to write in, because we often do create stuff and send it out there to the world, and we get to see the download numbers, but compared to the percentage of people that write in, it's very tiny and small. So it's great to hear that it resonated so much with the people listening out there. So yeah, totally appreciate the love that came in from that episode and that conversation that I had with Croaks. I want you to enjoy this episode with Ben Buckingham. Thanks for tuning in again. What are we, 19th of November, 5 down, 5 to go, with at least 3 more locked in, ready to go. So we're going to be close. Going to be real close to get this 10 by the end of November. Massive thanks to Lululemon. Check out More Than a Run. I know I've kind of mentioned it a couple of times in these introductions over the past few episodes, but More Than a Run, November 25th. So 10K, 30K or 60K, whatever you kind of choose on that day. And they come up with those numbers because some of this stuff I'm about to read kind of blew me away when I first read it. But 10K for 1 in 10 men around the world living with anxiety disorder. 30K for the 30% rise in the number of Australian men dying by suicide over the last decade. And the 60K for the 60 men who lose their life to suicide each hour, every hour around the world. So, let those numbers sink in. It's obviously a good cause and a good reason to partake. I'll put the notes in the show notes if you want to know more. Enjoy this chat with Bucks. Thanks, guys. All right, this will be episode, I think, 5 of Inside the Mind, and we're joined by a guest who's been on a guest host, I reckon, at one stage. We've interviewed him a couple of times, a couple of phone-ins while he's been overseas. Ben Buckingham, welcome back to the Inside Running Podcast, and thank you for giving up some time and some, I'm sure we're going to talk about some experiences, some vulnerability in this Inside the Mind episode.
It's good to be here, Brady, and thanks for having me. I'm sure we'll get into it.
We will, yeah. Hey, last time we spoke to you, I reckon you were coming off a niggle. Would that be right when you filled in that time? I know since then you've got married as well, so a bit's changed in your life, and maybe a new niggle or injury?
No, it was. I was in the final throes of accepting. I probably had to stop running when I last spoke to you. I'd been managing osteitis pubis for probably most of my European season. And it was one of those things that having not had it before, it always just felt muscly, and I just ran on it for a long time, and it sort of kept settling until I eventually had to accept it wasn't settling up in Switzerland right at the end of my season. And I think I called my season maybe 2 weeks after we spoke and came home. I mean, it's funny, like thinking about what your like this whole focus of this podcast, because I've actually dealt with this break like surprisingly well mentally. Like I've been quite enjoyed having time off, and it really hasn't bothered me. And I think it's because I knew for a while when I was managing the niggle, and me and Craig knew that I was going to have a break when I stopped. So it wasn't like when you're flying and you're going really well and you suddenly get the news you need 4 weeks off. That can really fuck with you. But when you know it's coming, I sort of went home like quite looking forward to the break and sort of knowing it was in the works. And then I was getting married at the end of October, so we sort of looked at it like worst case, I'd have a good 10 weeks off till then, and then start running. And pleasingly, I think I did about 10K this week, but I've been back running for a couple of weeks, and I'm building slowly. So it's actually been a really good break.
How much do you think the fact that it came at that time of the season and you had a wedding to look forward to helped you in that situation?
Well, it's definitely good. I mean, I'm fortunate because I came back home and I had a job to go back to, so that sort of gives you a bit of structure and routine. And I had a wedding to plan for. And it's funny, like my boss said to me, Ben, you've never been this productive. You don't look as tired and gaunt as you normally do, and you're not yawning in meetings. So I mean, they said I was a lot more energetic and productive because I wasn't running 140 clicks a week. But I just think one of the hardest things for runners or any professional athlete is when you stop and you have nothing else to do. That's when you really go mad and struggle. Particularly if your cross training is something you're doing solo rather than with a group. And I think just for me, just having able to get back onto a routine work-wise and have, in my spare time a wedding to plan for, or help my partner plan, who'd done, the majority of it the previous, 4 months while I was overseas, that really gave me something to focus on. And it was also good sort of having that cap, because I sort of said, well, worst case, I'll wait till I get married and then I'll start running, which is sort of what Craig had always said. Let's just, get you healthy, take your time. And there's no rush this season. I backed myself to get really fit once I'm going in January, Feb. So it was, I think I dealt with it pretty well.
Because you've always had to almost do the double peak, like run really, like you've always been pretty fit in like January, Feb and dominating the Australian scene, I feel. And then you've almost got to do it again later in the year for the championships. So will this change a bit this time around?
Well, I mean, I sort of think I'll get up to Falls Creek in January. Like I've just had that signed off by work. Hopefully I'm up to running, every day, potentially a double by that stage. I'll come out of that block pretty fit. There'll be a race in Adelaide, which I'll do if I need to. But I mean, for me, Paris is pretty simple. I need to probably have one good result domestically and a good result overseas, and it's just really just try not to rush, because like I've always had an ability to sort of just go up to a training camp and like smack myself fit for 4 to 6 weeks. But you become conscious as you get a bit older as an athlete. You shouldn't always be relying on taking such a high risk approach. So this year we're just trying to say, just get me fit. We've got lots of time. Let's just be quite methodical. So I don't think you'll see as much of me domestically, but I'll be. I always think you can't get on the plane to Europe tired, because you need to be able to go over there and crank up intensity, crank up training. You're traveling, you're racing, like everything cranks up, and you've got to get on that plane relatively fresh, not burnt out from the domestic season. And that's my real aim this year, just to get to Europe able to take it up a notch, rather than have burnt all your matches in the domestic season.
Yeah, and I know, like, I was having this same conversation with someone yesterday, because we were talking about the saying, like, do the training to be able to do the training, which is good.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think a lot of people, especially like when you're building for a marathon, like you want to be fit that 12, 16 weeks out, however long your block is. But if you've gone too hard to do the training before you do the training, then all of a sudden you're in this massive hole that you can't get out of, and may end up injured going into the marathon and kind of just overcooking yourself. So that the importance of those down weeks and kind of layering the training so it's not always at a high level is I agree. How many people would have got on planes to go overseas and they're just cooked and just hoping for the taper?
And it's sort of, I mean, it's very probably more true for a marathon. But when you travel to race, I mean, you don't have time to get over a niggle. You don't have time to get healthy if you're a bit sick. All you've got time to do really is land, freshen up, and race, assuming you're going like to race quite quickly. So it's, if you're getting on that plane thinking, God, I need a holiday, I need a break, I need a bit of sleep, I mean, sometimes that can actually be the worst thing because you just end up sluggish and flat.
Yeah.
It's almost there's nothing wrong with being tired sometimes, notwithstanding what I've just said. It's more sometimes your mentality. It's just like clarity on getting ready and what you're doing is key.
Yeah. So, Bucks, as we sit here today, November 19th, give me a score out of 10 for your mental health.
I'd say I'm pretty good at the moment. I'd say like 8 or 9. Like I've recently married and I've started running. So I mean I can't really complain currently.
You look good too. You look full of energy. We've got our cameras on, listeners, and this guy's looking healthy. A good beard on him. What's stopping you from giving it a 10 then?
Oh, I had an interesting week at work. Just being around a lot of people who've understandably experiencing quite a stressful situation. And that's probably I'd say that's why it's not a 10.
Do you usually cope well? I'm thinking about like when you're in the group training environment, like MTC and then OAC now. It'd be a mixture of personalities, and when people are generally high stressed around you, are you good at coping with kind of blocking that out and just kind of worrying about yourself?
I mean, it's a lot of it's just compartmentalization. But I mean, I've been a junior in a law firm, which was just surrounded by people just breaking left, right, and centre. So I'm pretty good in such sort of chaotic environments. So I mean, a lot of it's just just managing yourself and I think just knowing your own triggers. And I mean, like for a personal example, this is directly what you're asking, but I always think runners, you're the worst at taking your own advice. And it's really important to have someone in your corner. And for me, like one of my good mates, Brad Mathers, like we're really good at giving each other advice and shocking at taking our own advice. So we'll always say, we'll call each other and we'll say, what do you think about this? Should I have a day off? Should I do this? How does this? What do you think about the way this is panning out? And the advice is great, but we'd never take advice ourselves. And it's just, I think it's just having someone who you trust who can back you in, and ideally someone who sort of to tie it back to what you said, someone who's not actually in your group, they're not there in your sort of daily training environment. It's like a slight step removed, but someone you're really close with. I think having someone like that, particularly when you're in a pretty intense, sometimes cultish environment, it's important to have that dynamic.
Yeah, I would have never guessed that you said Brad Mathers either. If you said to me who you reckon 10 people are that Bucks could potentially say for that answer, I would have never guessed him.
Well, we work together at the bank, which sort of adds a bit of flavour to us. So our teams chat online is always a bit of fun, but we sort of got really tight during COVID because we just did a lot of Sunday runs together, and that just sort of really we sort of became good mates through that, and goes from there.
Can you go back? This is completely off topic, but the law firm when you're a junior, like, is it exactly like the movies? Because every time I watch like a series when it's got to do with lawyers, it's just like work a million hours, treat people like shit, got to like climb the ladder, that kind of culture.
I mean, the work's not as varied, but a lot of it's pretty pretty accurate. I mean, like there's all sorts of sort of cultural things, and they have changed a bit post COVID because I think there's a bit more of an acceptance now that you don't have to be in there for FaceTime, 6 days a week. But certainly when I was there, I mean, if you stayed till 7:30, you got a free meal and a taxi home. That just incentivized you. If you're there at 6:30, why on earth would you go home and cook? You can just that sorts you out. I mean, it's just the nature of the of having billable hours. I mean, I wouldn't leave until I hit my numbers every day, which was about 6.5, 7 billable hours a day, and that just means on a Friday you're just staying till 7 or 8 at times. And I mean, it was on one hand there was something incredibly sort of rewarding and like satisfying when I was in that environment and I was running and I made world champs in Doha, saying I could hack both. But ultimately I just found I was just never home. Like I'd work till 6, I'd go into a 20K workout and I'd go back to work. And like you'd have periods at work where for a week I was home when a partner was in bed for a week straight. And like it's just not sustainable doing that. Like you can do it. The reason there's a term I've heard a UK lawyer use. It's about grads and they call them firewood. And like that's a shocking term, but when you actually sort of unpack it, there's a lot to be said that you get a fresh new batch every year, like get a bit of energy around the place, burn brightly and then flame out. And it's I mean culturally, like I say, I think things have changed post COVID, but my experience culturally was very much a churn and burn type of dynamic, and I really found my running sort of sustained me through that because it made every day a bit different for depending on what sessions you were doing. Made you really motivated and to actually finish on time and get out to train. I'd run for my commute regularly, which really helped me with like time efficiency and just getting your training done. So it's I'm always really glad I went there, but I'm very glad I've left. Quite like being home for dinner and having a bit more time for myself during the day.
Yeah. So going forward, I know you said about you got some time off work to go to Falls Creek and stuff, but you'll still be pretty much full-time bank worker, full-time. What are you actually doing at the bank? Like you're just not on the teller, surely. A guy, you're.
No, I mean there's a bit more to banking. I love how the first question is you're not on the teller in the branch. Brad cut his teeth in the branch, so he'd be able to give you a few more stories. Yeah. But they don't let me anywhere near customers. No, I'm so I was originally in risk, and I was originally in a team which sort of which essentially dealt with changes in lending policy and strategy, and with regulatory relationships. And so you didn't really have any
in layman's terms. I don't know what that.
I don't have any contact lending customers money, but I help prepare the policies that sort of inform how we lend them money.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. So will you continue with that role as a full-time job and full-time athlete with going towards Paris?
Well, I've just changed jobs internally, and I mean I will stay full-time. I've always been very good at sort of managing both, and like I always think I'm someone who does a lot better having more on than not. So I'm planning on doing both. I mean, it's obviously a fluid space, and we'll see. They've been very supportive with me taking about multiple months off every year for the past not just ANZ, but for the past 4 or 5 years. Like I think my partner worked out I've been away for a year total in the last 3. And that's not including like domestic races and Falls Creek camps and things. So it's I've been very, very lucky to have very supportive employers throughout that period. And a lot of it's just you work a really big 6 months and you really show you're valuable, so they're then prepared to support you because they'd rather have you for 3/4 of the year than have someone else who can't work to the same standard for the rest. And they've also, they've let me work remotely. I've worked from the UK a couple of times remotely, and they've really been supportive on that. So the bank's been fantastic for my running.
And for your running and with your mental health, like it sounds like you'd almost be better when you are working. Like how some people like they can't manage it, it's got too much on kind of thing. But you said you like to be busy and stuff. So you think that working makes you a better runner?
I do, and I also think like. It might have been different, 5-10 years ago. Like I think that when you're, like speaking generally, like when you're, I don't know, 20, 22, 25, a lot of your mates and friends, they're not working either. Like they're studying. You've got a lot of time to see them. And so I mean, if you are just training and drinking coffee, I mean, you've got a lot of people to spend that time with. But as you're getting on to, I mean, I think you'll be 37 now, 36, and I'm I don't know what age you are. That's not really important. And I just turned 32. The point I'm making is, most of your friends are in that same space of life I am, which is, you're working and you've got married and you might be fortunate enough to have bought a place. You know what I mean? And I think if I was just running now, I'd probably just go mad because I mean, you'd be sitting around waiting to train every day. Your partner in the office all day. You know what I mean? Most of your friends are busy with work. Like it isn't. I just don't think that would really be great for me. Or you spend your whole time hanging out with 22-year-olds, which doesn't really appeal to me either. So I really like work for that sort of that clarity and structure it gives. And I find I'm like more organised and more efficient, and sort of probably makes me better at everything else I'm doing because I'm busy. So as long as I'm not so busy as I was at Minters when I'm literally never home and I'm going in on Sundays to finish work, I'm pretty happy with the balance I strike.
Yeah.
And like I've never been a hugely high mileage guy. Like I've done all my best work doing about 2 doubles a week, maybe 140 clicks.
Yeah.
And I find that's really the sweet spot for me. And I've pushed the envelope on training camp sometimes, but that's sort of the line I find is best, and that's the line that I find I can sort of sit on when I'm working and I put other stuff on. Yeah. So I think that's sort of the balance I've really found, and I'd be reluctant to change now. Plus, I'm just married, so I mean, it'd be a tough chat to my partner to say I'm just going to run for a while. I mean, it's that's one for the committee meeting, I suppose.
What about the day-to-day life of Ben Buckingham? Like, what things do you do to look after your mental health? Like, have you got any, routines or just things that you need in your day, every day of the week, to be, the best person you can be?
I mean, I think you link this to injury quite nicely, because I think like you're in so many ways you're running is sort of the best thing for that. And what I mean by that is work can be quite mundane, it can be quite repetitive, like a 9 to 5, 5 days a week. But with training it makes every day completely different. You've got your workout days, you've got your gym days, you've got your easy run days, you've got a mid-week long run, and it really gives you a great deal of clarity and focus for every day. And I find that really blends through the rest of your day to in regards to you're getting to sleep on time, you're eating well, you're hydrating, you're doing all the right things during the work day because you've got another run to do later that day. So I think just as simple as just getting your training done well is really valuable for your mental health, like day to day. The second part isn't quite mental, but it's the buzzwords are designated training environment, and that's the people you're around, your setup at home, how conducive is it to you get out the door to get all your stuff ready. As I look around the house, wondering if this is actually the case for me today. I'm really fortunate that I've got a gym literally 800 meters from my front door, and I just find for me just that walk in the morning to get there before I get ready for my run, and then I'll usually go to the office from there. That really helps me get my day started. I'm big on just getting out of the house and getting a day started with a little walk or a coffee, even if it's 10 minutes. Sometimes to get your Achilles and the rest of your body to unlock, so you're not in agony after once you get up. But also just you clear your head and you get moving. So I've probably rambled slightly for this answer, but that's I think your training's key to really get your day started. And conversely, that's why so many people fall in a heap when they're injured, because you lose that. You think you got more time to do everything, but you're lethargic and you're unmotivated and you're quite down because you've lost that structure and drive that really gets you out the door every day. And I've been and sometimes I think cross training it does keep you fit, but sometimes it's more just for your mental just to try and recreate that structure and purpose. And I've been going to the sauna for doubles quite regularly. I don't know if it's actually doing anything for me, but mentally, just getting out of the house a second time a day. You normally go with a mate, so you chat away for half an hour. It's just a really great way to just sort of cap off your day and to sort of help you wind down as well. Especially when you've been on the tools. On the tools for me is a bit of a joke because I'm behind a keyboard, but especially when you've been on the tools all day, ticking along. That's it's good to unwind and get away.
Plenty of good stuff there, Bucks. That was good, and it's amazing the things that you do, but you don't think about them until someone asks you about it. So you kind of say it's pretty basic answer, but maybe for you, but not so much for other people listening.
Unpack that for me further. You say, what do you mean exactly?
I don't know, one of your part in your answer might be oh yeah, I could, walk it for that 8 minutes to that place instead of jumping in the car and taking 2 minutes. How much is that going to improve someone's mental health?
And it's the other. If I drive to the gym and I get stuck in traffic, that's going to really fuck my mental health. Just getting annoyed I'm stuck behind a tram when I could have walked there in 8 minutes. Yeah. So really, it's no, absolutely. That's. I've never had a dog with my partner. But I think that's one reason why that's so valuable for some people. Is just starting the day with a walk every day, just getting yourself out. Getting yourself out of the house twice a day at the minimum. That's such a good thing for you. Especially when you're doing those jobs, which are especially when you're working remotely and you're just on the computer and you don't leave the house. That's really not good for you.
Yeah. What about race anxiety and pressure and all that kind of stuff? From the outside looking in, you always have seemed pretty calm, but I'm totally aware that might not be the case. How have you gone with that over the years?
Well, the one of the really good bits of advice I got was there's nothing wrong with being anxious pre-race. In fact, being anxious pre-race probably means you're ready, because you're super fit and you're expected to perform and you might be the favourite in that race. So you're anxious because you should be winning this race and you're ready to go. But there's nothing wrong with being anxious. The issue is if you start stressing about being anxious. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with being stressed, but if you stress about being stressed. Whereas if you just more approach it this is just part and parcel of how I feel before a race. I always feel pretty shit, and I always know I race well. And I sort of deal with it like that. But it doesn't really bother me because I sort of chuckle at how I feel. And I'm also conscious that in a few years I'll when I'm done, I won't feel this way anymore. But there's nothing else in your life that can recreate the feeling of being on race day. Just waiting to start your warm-up, just hanging around, especially when you're racing at 9 o'clock at night and you've got a whole day in a hotel room just watching the clock. It's awful sometimes. But I find I race quite well because I'm just like, well, it is what it is. There's nothing, and also there's nothing like the sense of relief when you then do race well. You know what I mean? It's more special because of how you were feeling beforehand. I find so, and I think I deal with it pretty well. It's just some people might not be anxious at all, but it's just not stressing about it is the hardest thing, but also the simplest thing. Is the answer I find. Yeah. And the best way to do that is, I know I've raced really well, feeling this way repeatedly. So, what am I worried about? That's how I deal with it.
Yeah, you got evidence there to remember that, like, hey, last time I felt this way, this is what the result was. This is what we're after. I love the part about you said, like, because I often think like that. You get nervous or you get like, I can't be bothered doing this, but I'm sure when I'm 50, I'm going to be like wishing I could go back to being on a race day in a hotel, getting on a plane to go to Tassie for the weekend or whatever it is, and being like, try to appreciate these times when you're actually in them.
And not even just racing, but like just being fit. Like there's nothing like when you're in great shape and you're doing workouts or runs when you can push as hard as you want and you can recover and go again. Like there's nothing like being in that sort of shape. And like, we're all gonna really miss it when it's done. And it's special because it's so fleeting. It wouldn't be special if it was something you could do for your whole life. So yeah. That's why I say, like, I've essentially been lucky enough to go on an adventure 4 out of the last 5 years to Europe. Yeah. If you want to look at it like that, and I've seen all these cool races, and I've met so many people, and I've had 3 months off work each year roughly. I did my first one at 27. Like that was never supposed to happen, and it's been absolutely incredible. And at some point I'll be done. So I'm just trying to enjoy it as the next couple of years as it goes before all these young blues start beating me.
Yeah. Have you ever been in a position where like the anxiety or the pressure has got to you, or you felt it more in some races than other races? Like Tokyo would have been weird, wouldn't it, with the empty stands? Like did that almost take the pressure away a bit?
It probably did. Like I don't really because Doha was obviously and was a World Champs, which was also sparsely attended for the first few days. So Tokyo was quite unique because of I can't really compare it to another championship because I haven't really lived in a championship village. Com Games to a degree, but at the time I'd never experienced anything like that. So I wasn't someone who was saying, compared to Rio, this is different, because I was just, how lucky are we to be here at the Olympics, considering all year we expected this thing to be cancelled. So there was a really like overwhelming sense of relief in Tokyo that everyone just there that it was actually happening, and I think that was really positive. But in Tokyo it was just don't get COVID. That was because if you got COVID you weren't racing. So it was just quite a lockdown, quite focused period. I think I was quite fortunate that my race was really early on in the program. I was the first track race of the program, so that came around quite quickly, and it was very calm. You walked out on the track. And there were teammates of mine who could then walk over to their coach and ask what the split had been for the previous race. I wasn't worrying too much. I was just focusing on the guys I was racing. But you know what I mean? It was definitely very different for those things. But I don't know if that really changes pressure, because you also knew that compared to all your other races, so many of your family and friends and old school friends and everyone was watching. So it was it was probably just as much pressure, but it was probably a more calm environment.
You're very much cup half full kind of guy, I'm getting from this conversation. Like appreciating the Olympics are on, appreciating that these races aren't going to be here forever. That's my vibe so far, Bucks. That's a good way to be.
Oh, I don't take myself too seriously, Brady. A lot of it's just it's, as I said, it's special because it's fleeting. So that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, but that can be with anyone listening. The same thing. Like we're maybe not going to the Olympics or World Champs like you, but it's like you're in a spot where you're running the best you've ever been, or you're not far off that spot, or you're working towards being in that spot. Like it's a good thing to think about. What about like, have you been in a slump before, or has your mental health been like good the whole way through?
No, there's definitely bits and pieces. Saying like sort of more like current time, I know I had like in 2022 I had like to start the season I'd had a femur stressy. I sort of got on the plane very unfit. I raced in Japan around about 8:40, which is pretty bad. I then raced in Doha Diamond League and around about 9:06 and was probably pretty close to being lapped by El Bakali. And I still remember that day. I remember I was coming through with a lap to go and they were holding the cameraman back from entering the track because he was trying to run on there to film El Bakali finishing the race, which was pretty deplorable. And like a month later, I ran my PB and really turned it around. And I think it was almost so bad I didn't worry about it that day because I knew I wasn't that unfit. But it was I remember that season felt like it was just just constantly just trying to pull yourself out of holes and rush yourself fit, and that was that definitely had its challenges.
What about like external pressure? Like you feel like you don't put much on yourself, but with Craig, with Nick previously, not that steeplechase or athletics gets like big media, people speaking about it, like on the front page of the paper and things like that. But how do you deal with pressure that other people, could be even your family and stuff or training partners, put on you?
I mean, it's probably not something I really turn my mind to. I mean, I've worked with a lot of interesting people at different motivational strategies, both in work and in running. And I mean, a lot of it's just learning to manage them and sort of understanding where they're coming from, and sometimes it's as simple as without using specific examples, but it's as simple as you might not agree with everything someone's saying, but you're trying to sort of say, well, what's the underlying message they're trying to get to, even if they're communicating it quite badly, and sort of focus on that. Well, that was something early in my career, Ryan Gregson really talking about, and I think that was a really valuable approach, which I've taken to use on lots of people. Because sometimes it can be a very emotionally wrought conversation you're having with your coach, and that doesn't necessarily mean everyone's communicating that well. But sort of what's the underlying point? If you can find value from that, well, that's probably what you should focus on. And if you can't find value from that, well, it's probably time to leave. Yeah. Really, because then you're really not going there. Because it's very hard to climb out of a hole when you're stuck in one. Like the biggest one I got into was probably in end of 2019. Like I came back from leave. I'd been away for 4 months racing, gone to Doha, and the day I got back, the person I sat next to at work resigned, and I got all of her work, and I just got into a massive hole, and like my only way I knew to get out of it was just to push harder, and that didn't help either. And I remember I got in this negative feedback loop where I was I'd go in every Sunday to catch up for the work week, but then I'd be so tired from going in Sunday that I wouldn't be getting enough work done during the week, so then have to go again, which really isn't helping. But in the moment, like, you can't really identify that. In the moment, all you're thinking of is just going day to day, just pushing through. And it probably took me I probably didn't get out of that hole till about March, April of next year, without quite realizing how tired I was. It was just cumulative fatigue that I never really got over. And you compare that to years since when I've got back, when I really just tried to take that break. And I mean, this year being a good example, like rather than being back at work day one, just having a couple of days working remotely up at my folks' place really helped me unwind and just get a bit less tired. And a lot of it, I'm probably linking a lot of it to tiredness, but that's more a symptom of other things, and it's sort of really just trying to be honest with yourself about when you are just a bit run down and you need a day. Because the hardest thing, like in work, in running, is in some ways is taking a day off. Partly culturally, because there's a real sort of you might even just self-impose that you're being soft, but also because one day can save you 6 down the track. And the hardest thing is to really be in tune with yourself well enough to say, if I take off today, I won't notice this in 3 days. I'll be back rolling. And conversely, it's like when you're getting sick and you push on for 1 day too long and they need 5 days off. If you've just taken that day, you might have been fine. And that's a really, really hard lesson to learn, I think. But that's one it just takes time. And I mean, especially in corporate, it is in some ways it is good to not to burn out, but sort of find out where your limits are when you're in your 20s. Because then you know where they are, so you can sort of work up to that point, but not cross it as you push on with your career. So it is quite good to see just how hard you can work in some ways. And I think being in the law firm was really good for me for that point. But and you've definitely got me talking here more than I normally do. But the only other thing I'd link it to would be like people are like anyone. I say that's the thing I say. Like anyone can work hard for 6 weeks, and this is true professionally or if you're running. Anyone can smash themselves for 6 weeks, try and get fit, or work super hard on a transaction or a project. But not many people can manage themselves to stack 5 years together. And everyone is highly successful in this sport and like in corporate, like top law firms. They're the ones who don't burn out. They're the ones who can just sit on that line for years. And that's really like the approach I really try and take is like, where is that sustainable line that I can just sit on consistently? And for training, for me, it's like I know I can run 130, 140 Ks a week year round. Now, I might be up against guys who are running 170, but if they get injured and miss 6 weeks or 8 weeks, I don't quite know what the maths is, but I might have run more than them that year. And it's just like, and that's something I really like to focus on. Just what can you stack for 5 years sustainably? That's how you'll get good at something, really good at it.
Well,
versus just working hard.
Stewie, don't they? Like Stewie wasn't that good, but he just stacked 5 years.
I mean, it's funny because we say he wasn't that good. I mean, I think he ran about 13:55 at the Melbourne Track Classic in the 5K before he started stacking. But it's true. Like he, I obviously haven't trained with Stewie for about a year and a half, but he probably, the time I was there with him, I don't recall him. He was just the most consistent person you've ever seen. And he had done that for, since about 2015 up to 2020, just barely missed a beat. Or if he missed something, it would be, he'd take a day. He wouldn't, it wasn't like it's like a 1 day injury doesn't turn into a week injury or a week into a month. Like he'd be really good at just managing himself like that.
Runners are really hard at taking that day when it's a workout day too, because they think it's worth way more. Like they'll maybe take it on an easy day, I can skip that, but missing a long run or a workout day is hard for people to do.
Or trying to make it up. I mean, that's the dumbest thing you can do, but we've all done it.
Yeah.
But it's silly because in the moment it's impossible to take the day off. But 5 days later, you won't even remember. Compared to 5 days later being like, why the hell did I run that day? Now I'm 4 days into a niggle.
Yeah.
That's really unhelpful. And I think that's one of the questions you were going to ask me was like one other thing I find really valuable, because injuries really can muck you around mentally. One thing really valuable is for me is just having physio booked every week, because it means like you have a niggle crop up. I know in 3 days I'm going to be seeing someone, so it's like, well, no need to worry about this. If it's still sore in 3 days, I'll get the physio's opinion and we'll go from there. Normally, and if it's come good, no stress. Rather than, running it for 4 days or a week, every day wondering is that sore, then trying to book you in. A week later you get your appointment, and then it's like 2 weeks of emotional stress on top of the injury, which will probably made it worse as well. As opposed to just saying, well, I know I'm seeing, usually it was Kev Craigie for me. I know I'm seeing him every week. He'll sort it out.
So if there's nothing come up though, do you still go see him?
Every week.
Yep. You just book in, same time, same place every week.
Well, I'm lucky. Like I get it for free at the VIS.
Yeah, but still,
now, and on supporting me for a while. But before I got into the VIS, was making teams. Like I probably saw Kev every week in 2018.
Yeah. Interesting, because you're saying it's not just for your body, but it's good for your mind, because it's there. It gives you reassurance almost.
Yeah, especially when you're on the edge in training, and especially through summer. Just regular treatment, just to check in and sort of, because it's also it ties into what I said about just getting on top of things early. Rather than waiting until they've actually become a problem, just hitting them on the head really early is one of the best things. Because even people who are incredibly consistent, they're still managing niggles all the time. They're just managing them really well.
Yeah, I love that, mate. That's good. What's your head do in different runs? Like, do you have different, like, when you come off a track workout or a long run or like an easy jog, like which one do you prefer? Which one's the best for your head?
I don't really think I have a preference. I more just think it's when you there's a feeling when you're starting to click, when you're really getting fit, and sometimes it's not really the data; it's just a feeling you have. And like I remember of having had it before, and knowing I'm going to run a PB and then running one, and it's just that's probably the feeling you're chasing. That sort of that last 6 weeks.
You get that on your jogs as well as like the workouts and stuff.
Well, when you're really going well, it's just a feeling when you're running, and you know you're on. That's probably the best thing. Rather than just, look, there's days when you're tired, and you're slogging away on Sunday, and there's days where you feel great. Like there's a lot of other things that affect how you feel. So I wouldn't really. And it's also always dangerous to be, focused on super sessions. So I don't really think I have a straight answer to your question. I more say it's more a feeling in your training. Like Craig sort of says, Craig would say like one of the best I think one of his triggers he says is always how do you feel in your doubles? Like if you come good by the end of the double and you start to feel good, that's a sign you're doing really well. If you're still bloody tired and limping around by the end, that's probably a sign you're on the edge.
Still
like it's in some ways. In some ways, that's a better sign, like a better way of measuring yourself than how you work it went that morning.
Interesting. Because I've thought about that with warm-ups before. Like when you start a warm-up and you might hit the first couple of Ks in like 4:30s and then you're rolling 4:10s and a 4:05 and you're like, okay, I'm ready for strides and change shoes and to hit this workout. But then there's those days where you're like, your last K is still 4:40 and you're like, oh, this could be, I might still have a bit of extra fatigue in the legs here and this might not go as well as I was hoping.
Yeah, that's a sign when you're probably on the edge, which is suboptimal is the word. That's all the buzz at the moment. Finding corporate,
or unless you just got all that strength there and you just need to just open the door a bit. That's the only other type. Sometimes when you're training for a marathon, you're like everything's sluggish until you want to turn on the tap, and then when you go to put that extra effort in, it just comes out.
Bucks, you might take 50 minutes to warm up. So
yeah, something like that. Well, that's maybe when you just need to go, you know what, I might just move this to tomorrow morning, get an extra couple of days. Bucks, do you use any resources for your mental health or talk regularly to anyone about it?
Not really, no. I'm more tying into what was said, I think just training with people. I mean, for many people say, the best thing in mental health is a Sunday run with 90 minutes with your mates. Just particularly because it's not like running. It's not really it's not a catch up when you're having a meal or a coffee or you're face to face and you're forced to make conversation. It's a very nice way of having a chat for an hour, especially if I can, especially for blokes. I think it's a really valuable resource. Just your training and just your company. So I think that's really important.
Love it.
I mean, if you've got an hour every day running with someone, that's why training camps are so good. It's an hour every day, at least, running with people, chatting. That's probably all you need, really.
Oh, I've been meeting my best mate for long runs, and I would never pick up the phone and call him for 2 hours, but we do a 2-hour long run together, and we might talk for an hour 50 of that, hour 55. There's not much dead time in that 2 hours, but you're just this is a forced male conversation, and it's almost, well, not so much with him because I know him really well, but sometimes when you're running with someone, it's kind of like doing a podcast in a way. First 10 minutes might be a bit hard to get stuff out of people. Then 20 minutes to loosen up. 30 minutes is good. You get someone an hour 20 in and you're open them up, throwing a lip at whoever you want to throw a lip at. It's a safe space to talk about anything, I reckon, 90 minutes in the long run.
Yeah.
Bucks, any questions you wish I asked you about your mental health? Have I missed anything when we're talking about this topic? Have you got any gems still up your sleeve that we haven't spoken about yet?
No, the only then the other thing that's I think is quite valuable is because my partner she might have told me this a couple of years ago, but she said to me, she really said the importance of not over catastrophizing stuff, and as in and I think a lot of runners get into that trap where existentially everything's on the line over a niggle, and it's just dealing with it methodically and not most things settle. You know what I mean? There's a chance something distresses you, but most things settle, and just not overthinking it and just getting on with it can sometimes be the best approach, rather than just letting that sort of stress about your run not being perfect permeate the whole rest of your day and affect your partner and friends like that. That's really and I remember she sort of said to me, she really said that to me. She said, I just think you're over catastrophizing stuff. And that was a couple of years ago, and that's really just affecting everything. And it was really good feedback, because it's something in the moment yourself you've got no hope of seeing that. So it's just important having people around you who can work that out.
Yeah,
it's like the hardest thing I think to learn sometimes is when you say to someone who's struggling, you say do you need solutions or do you need sympathy? Sometimes they just want that and especially sometimes for, I don't mean to say it, especially sometimes for a bloke you want to just jump to solutions straight away, but sometimes it's just knowing what are they actually after. They just need a chat rather than trying to fix it, and that's a really valuable thing, I think, when you're helping someone who's struggling.
Oh, mate, 100%. That's been the whole goal of this podcast. Like, we're not providing solutions. We're just like, let's just have a chat about stuff, and not so much sympathy either. But it's just like, just talk, just chat, and see. Have the conversations that you wouldn't usually have when Ben Buckingham's coming on, and we want to know about his 1K split times or how many miles he's hitting a week, that kind of stuff. So it's been a pleasure, mate. I really appreciate you giving up. About 45 minutes for the Inside Run podcast audience. I reckon you'd be at Zatopek in 2 weeks' time. You won't be racing, but you'll be there because On's taking it over. Got any exclusives for us? Peking Duck announcement last week. Got anything else you can tell us?
I mean, I always get in strife by Luke Bell and others for you guys asking me for exclusives on this when it hasn't been signed off on.
Clacker coming, Joe Clacker.
I won't talk people. I'll just say it's just a very exciting thing to be part of. Like I've been to I was lucky enough to race at the Vienna on track meet, and I watched the US the Sound Running one, and I was coaching my team members at the Paris one, and it's been a really exciting thing to just sort of see trying to bring that like something different to a track meet with a bit more of a festival atmosphere and a bit more going on. Because the hard thing with the track meet is there's just so much dead time between races, and really just trying to have stuff going on to fill that. So it'll be interesting how it's received, but that sort of energy and like a more unique feel is what they're going for, and I'm really excited to see how that pans out.
Don't have to give me a name, but give me this one. We're talking with 2 laps to go. Jack Rayner, Pat Tiernan next to each other. Is there a third person?
I mean, I haven't. It probably depends how the race really pans out. I mean, I think before before they announced the World Cross Trail, actually being a World Cross Trail, I mean, like third place at Zatopek was going to be fascinating, particularly because there's so many good guys in that bracket who'd be fighting for that third spot. So I mean, I'd probably bias, and I'll say my teammate Zach Fascioni because I think he's going really well. But I mean, I think the exciting thing in Australian running at the moment is those 2 guys are obviously flying, but there's so many other men who are fighting for that third spot right now. I think it'll be really exciting to see that race pan out, sort of that race within a race.
Yeah. All right, mate. You haven't given us much. I thought you might have given us some kind of exclusive, but I know your types of like profession and qualifications are very like got to dot the I's and cross the T's. So I'm looking for you'll be down there on the ground. You'll be doing some kind of signing autographs. I think
I'll be watching and coaching. I don't think I'll be doing anything serious, but I'm looking forward.
You got like an assistant coach role with on now as well.
No, I just mean because I'm the only one not racing, and there's about 10 of them racing, so I'll be helping out Craig.
Holding smart bags and stuff.
Nothing official there.
Okay.
No.
That's good, mate. Thanks again for your time. Appreciate the chat.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Brady.